If Jennifer Salke got her way and we had a Stargate movie before a new series, how would that look? Welcome to SciTrek, your sci-fi TV and movie channel. Now this is going to be more of a rambly video. I'm going to just tell you how I feel about the concept or the prospect of a new Stargate movie. What that could potentially look like and my thoughts about it. So, I mean, the way I see it, there are one of two possibilities that could happen. The first possibility is with a new movie, it's going to be kind of like a hard reboot. It's going to basically continue on from where the original movie left off. The second option would be a continuation. So everything that happened in Stargate SG-1, Stargate Universe, Stargate Atlantis, it all happened. And anything that happens in the new movie is a continuation of that. So let's dive into those two possibilities, because the very first possibility that I mentioned would be the concept of a hard reboot, and that's something that I'm not on board with. And I know a lot of you guys who watch this video now are going to be down in the comment section down below going, no hard reboots, no hard reboots. And it's something I completely agree with you on. We don't need a reboot. Not enough time has passed from when Stargate left our screens in 2011 to now to warrant having a hard reboot. You can continue the story. Yes, you're going to have new actors. Yes, you're going to have new stories, but you can bring in the old characters as cameos. You can have them be special guests and basically acknowledge the fact that the entirety of the 17 seasons that have come before whatever comes now would have happened. And that's what I want. I want something that will continue what has already happened. But let's, for example, say they do a hard reboot, okay? If they were to do a hard reboot and it was to continue on from where the original 1994 movie left off, I can see two possibilities with this. They would either do a hard reboot-ish, where they would essentially draw on what had happened in SG-1 and bring in little aspects of that story into the new movie, which is an ideal. I think that would be the ideal of the two scenarios I'm going to put forward. The second scenario would be if they continued with what Roland Emmerich and Dean Devlin's original movie plans were. Now, if you don't already know, the original plans for the Stargate movie were to be a trilogy, and this was something that was actually greenlit probably about 5 years ago, but it never came to fruition. For whatever reason, it didn't happen, and I'm quite thankful it didn't. But essentially, the original trilogy that was supposed to happen was we had the original 1994 movie that happened. We saw that. Happy days. But in the second movie, they would go to a second address, and there would essentially only be 3 addresses that the gate could go to. There wasn't thousands and thousands of addresses across the Milky Way galaxy and then more in the Pegasus galaxy. It was 3 addresses leading to different parts of the universe, because really what happened in the original movie is they went to a different galaxy, and that's something that they changed in SG-1, which I'm quite thankful that they did, because they were within the local galaxy, which was quite nice. But if they were to go to the second address in the second movie, it would have been a Mayan planet, and it would have centered around Mayan mythology, and that's pretty much all we know. The third movie would have been something very similar, but it would have tied up the Egyptian, the Mayan mythology, and then something else from Earth's mythology into one neat little ball, and would have given us the meaning of life kind of answers that we need as humans. That's essentially what the original trilogy was going to be. And if they were to do a hard reboot with this new movie, that's a possibility that they could go down, and that's something I'm not on board with. I would much rather, if they did a hard reboot, that they would essentially just draw an inspiration from what happened in SG-1, Stargate Atlantis, not necessarily acknowledging that they happened, but doing them again just in more interesting and fresh new ways. So some of the things that we're more accustomed to, like the dial home device, the GDOs that they use, the ships, attack vessels, the Asgard, if they just bring in little elements of what happened in SG-1 into a new movie and then a following series, assuming it's going to be a continuation of what the movie has, That's okay with me. But it's not the most ideal situation, or it's not the most ideal scenario for me at all. Now, the second option, outside of a hard reboot movie, would be a movie that continues what has already happened. A movie that acknowledges the 17 seasons that came before it, and acknowledges all the characters and the stories and everything that happened, and continues from the point we left off. Not necessarily from the point we left off. So the last time we saw anything to do with Stargate, it was Eli on the ship of Destiny, on the bridge of Destiny, looking out as everyone else was in stasis, and he was drifting into the vast nothingness in between galaxies. Now, you don't necessarily have to start at that point, but continuing in that timeline, essentially. That's what I would really, really like. The problem that I can see with a continuation, however, is how would they do it in a way that respects what's came before it and also brings in new audiences, because Amazon are going to be looking at a way to attract new audiences. They're not going to want to rely on the old audience, because a lot of us are quite old. A lot of us are old. They're going to want to start a franchise and have new people jump on board to that franchise. Just look at like what Star Wars did. That's been going since the early 60s. They had the old audience, and then they brought in the prequel trilogy that brought in new audiences, and then they had the sequel trilogy which brought in even more of an audience. And say what you like about Star Wars, that's kind of how I reckon Amazon will be looking at Stargate. They want to bring in a fresh new audience, but also they're going to want to please us as well. They're going to need to, because we are the most vocal people, because we already know and we're already invested in Stargate. They're going to need to please us first and foremost, but they're going to also they're going to have to attract new audiences. So how would they be able to create a movie that acknowledges everything that came before it? Just how can you do it? Because I can't honestly think of a way, and this is why I don't work at Amazon or MGM. I'm not that creative. I can't think of a way for them to create a story that makes sense, because what will more than likely happen if Jennifer Solke got her way, they had a movie before a series, and it came out in the cinema, which is what they seem to be wanting, a cinema release, okay? People are going to see Stargate in the cinema. There's going to be lots of news articles about it. Stargate is back, the second Stargate movie. And there's going to be people who have already watched the original 1994 movie. But they may not have necessarily watched SG-1, Stargate Atlantis, Stargate Universe. They may not have watched any of that. But if it's a continuation, how are you going to explain 17 seasons worth of character building, world building, events that happen, the fact that we now have ships, we have bases on other planets, and have it make sense? Because the jump from the 1994 movie to a new movie as a continuation is so huge that you can't explain it all in one movie. And this is where I'm struggling. How do you connect the two? How do you connect the original 1994 movie to a new movie, but also acknowledge the 17 seasons in between? This is something I can't wrap my head around. I can't think of a way that they can do this. And this is why I'm so worried about there being a movie. Yes, a movie would bring in a larger audience, and we've spoken about audience like mixing. Like you'll have people who watched the 1994 movie, people who have just watched SG-1, and then you have general sci-fi fans, and they're going to want to try and interconnect those audiences as much as possible to have as large of an audience with whatever they do, whether it's a series or a movie. But I just cannot think of a way for them to do this in a good way. The most logical scenario I can think of is don't do a movie first. Yes, it will bring in more audiences and you'll have probably a little bit more money to spend on a series, but you can do a movie later on. Start with a series, start with something that we are familiar with, something that will tie up loose ends, something that will establish a new threat, a new arc, something that we can sink our teeth into, and then think about maybe making a movie based on that. Because if it's good enough, I feel if it's good enough and it gets the viewing figures that it needs, you can make a movie from the series. Just look what SG-1 did. They had Stargate Continuum, they had Stargate The Ark of Truth. Yes, it was on the tail end of DVD sales, and DVD sales went down, and they didn't make the third film that they were meant to make. But DVD sales mean nothing anymore. You've got streaming services where you can literally drop a movie and have it perform as well as if it would perform in the cinema. I don't know. My overall opinion is I just want a series to happen before a movie. Although I would love to see a Stargate movie in the cinema, I just don't see a way of it actually working. But let me know what you think. As the audience, as listening to what I've just said, all the scenarios I've put forward, what would be the most ideal scenario for you? Can you think of a way that they can make a movie and also have it respect the 17 seasons that came before it and have it make sense for newer audiences? I'd love to know, because I can't think of it myself. And it would be interesting to see and think, actually, yeah, that might work, and that might give me some more hope for a movie. Overall, as I said, the series coming first from Mark Ferguson, Hawk Ostby, that's what we want. That's what I want. Then maybe think about doing a movie after that, but let me know. If you are new to the YouTube channel, make sure you hit subscribe and press the bell notification so you don't miss a single video. Also, whilst you're down there, consider becoming a fully fledged SciTrekker by hitting the join button down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week.